This is very cheeky to include this, isn't it?
Hello, I'm Rebecca English.
Hello, I'm Richard Eden.
I'm Charlotte Griffiths.
And this is Acting Royal.
I've been asked to watch some clips showing representations of Harry and Meghan over the years.
Let's see what it's all about. Here we go.
What's the status of the meeting between me and Gran?
The Queen's people have postponed your meeting again, Your Highness.
What?
The palace has said that the Queen will be available to see you in 23 days' time.
Oh, that's a very long time.
Yes, well, we British tend to be rather good at pretending something isn't happening for so long, it'll simply just go away. Occasionally works.
This is not going away.
This is honestly what I think. When Harry wrote Spare, I think he was imagining this in his head. It's almost like it's Spare vomited onto a TV screen. It's such nonsense. It's so unrealistic.
There's a great line with the courtier who is, I think, what you would imagine a typically stiff upper lip style courtier to be, many of whom are not, but some of whom who are, saying, you know, this is a very British thing, we know something's happened, but we just pretend we don't hear it in the hope that it would go away. And that was definitely much the palace's reaction to what Harry and Meghan were asking, just because they thought what they were doing was unworkable. And that they hoped by just, you know, proving that they could be normal working members of the royal family, they would forget about this idea of those. And clearly that was something Harry and Meghan weren't willing to do.
Essentially, he thought that if he sat down with his grandmother, Queen Elizabeth, and talked things through, she would understand what their concerns were and they'd be able to work things out. But he later complained that even though she'd initially agreed to meet him, then it became difficult and courtiers started putting up barriers and saying that, you know, they'd have to wait and they couldn't meet. And that eventually sort of forced them to rush out statements.
Pa, I just thought you should know we're going public with our plans. We've got to get ahead of the press.
Have you gone mad? When?
In about 10 minutes.
You can't be serious. A 10-minute warning?
Pa, I've been trying to tell you for months and you've done nothing but stall. And if I'm really being honest, I've been trying to tell you I wanted to leave the firm my whole life. But you weren't listening. The same way you didn't listen to Mum.
Harry, how dare you?
You know, Meghan had her own moment when she was pregnant with Archie. That's what the firm does to people.
Oh, Harry, stop this right now.
I am. I'm stopping them from destroying us like they have so many others. So yeah, you get a 10-minute warning.
You get a 10-minute warning. I mean, I think in reality, this probably wouldn't have happened because the king doesn't like talking on a phone. He doesn't have his own mobile. And I think there would have been too many barriers put up for that to happen. But it's, you know, it's good drama and it's certainly things we can imagine the king saying.
Harry and Meghan escaping the palace is a real mixture of contradictions, because on one hand we probably have one of the worst Prince Harry lookalikes, physically wise, apart from the fact that he's also a redhead.
He's a bit taller than Harry, I think, in real life, but he seems to have captured him quite well.
Although the dialogue is imagined, a lot of what they're saying really did happen. That Harry and Meghan had been speaking to the palace for a very long time, many, many months, about their desire to have this kind of half in, half out relationship where they didn't have to be full-time working royals and could pursue commercial interests but still retain the perks and also do some of the work. And that actually did happen.
I think it's fair to say that Harry sees the firm as this entity that's very oppressive and imposing, but also like a sort of a cinematic universe that he can exploit in his own time. And yeah, and a brand almost that he can attach himself to whilst at the same time fleeing away from and sort of insulting as often as he can. But you know, that crown that they use at the top of their letterheads, they didn't decide to delete that when they left the royal family. They think of it as a brand, I think. And I think maybe that comes across a little bit.
Oh, so we've got Kristen Stewart
Mummy?
as Princess Diana.
Why do we have to open our presents on Christmas Eve? Why not Christmas Day like everybody else?
I'm trying not to laugh. It's a bit silly, isn't it? Very stilted, I think. I just can't really imagine the boys saying that about Christmas, to be honest.
Well, this is Prince Harry at his sweetest, you know, lying there with his head in his mother's lap.
Daddy told Harry it's
a sort of picture of innocence, really, and how they had their ideal life, you know, with their mother. So it's a very nostalgic portrayal. I mean, generally when we see representations of William and Harry with their father, it tends to be quite formal and stiff. You know, and Harry's written about that in his memoirs, how his father would come and say goodnight to him, and it always felt quite formal. But here we have, you know, Harry just lounging round, lying with his head resting in his mother's lap. And it couldn't be more intimate, natural setting. And I presume that's what the filmmakers were trying to portray.
I thought that was quite an accurate depiction, actually. And you can see that kind of tussle between two brothers, and I've got two kids. That's exactly what little kids do. They kind of just squabble, especially over things to do with presents.
So obviously we have a little red-headed actor playing Harry, so in that respect there is a physical similarity between the two, but character-wise I think not. The real Harry that we know as a child from the people who were with him intimately, you know, the staff, the cooks, the valets, the police officers, talk about being a very spirited child, you know, quite naughty, quite mischievous, you know, constantly fighting with his brother, and that may not surprise viewers at all. And this child seems quite kind of placid and quite manipulated. And I'm sure it must have been a very confusing time for him as a young boy. I mean, it would be for any child whose parents were breaking up, let alone in such a, you know, public limelight. But the Harry here almost seems a bit part to the relationship between his parents and this implosion of their relationship.
Okay, we're on to the next one now. This could
hook up with some rando the night before your mother's acceptance speech. You don't have her sign an NDA.
Well, this is definitely not the Crown.
And then you let her bring her phone in here.
Okay, there's Prince Harry. Prince Harry's in a cupboard. Okay, this makes total sense.
This is really something else now.
And who knows about this?
Literally no one but you. And the Secret Service.
And Percy.
Right, and Nora.
Oh, and I told my sister.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, she was really happy for us.
This is hilarious. So this is the son of the president is having an affair with Prince Harry.
So, am I worth telling you that this is a fictional Prince Henry?
Okay. Sorry, not Prince Harry, a fictional Prince Henry.
I haven't told
This is terrible.
Oh, gee, kid, I'm sorry to interrupt your process of becoming, but you're the one who decided to put your into the heir to the British throne.
Technically, I'm the spare.
Not talking to you, sir.
This is very cheeky to include this, isn't it? It's certainly an amusing fantasy. And you've got the practicalities as well. I think in this case, they're talking about the spare. So it's not the direct line of succession, but if it was the heir to the throne, then you're thinking about children and the implications of that. But yeah, it's a really interesting scenario, but I think we'll stick with fantasy just for now.
I will no longer be the prince of shame and of secrets.
Well, I suppose this offloading is very Harry.
Starting today, the world will know me for who I am, and not who you want me to be.
Interesting they haven't gone for the red hair colour, this one, because of course it is Henry, not Harry.
I can't believe you put me on the spot with this one. Well, clearly this is a fictional story, very much so, in the circumstances. Who's not to say it might not happen one day, but we certainly, not that we know of, have seen it happen until now. The one thing I would say that did ring true is this idea of the Prince Henry offloading and saying, I'm not going to be who you expect me to be, I want to live my life authentically, because of course I would say that's something we've heard quite a lot of over recent years, and we've even read a book, Spare, about it, but obviously a very different set of circumstances.
Obviously completely mad, but very funny. I wonder if they've ever watched it.
This is something which we've never seen in Britain, which would be an openly gay member of the royal family, you know, let alone in this case clearly a very senior one. You know, we even had it was a big story when a very junior member of the extended royal family, Lord Ivor Mountbatten, came out as gay and got married. So this is really something I find it hard to envisage at all. You know, it's obviously making for very entertaining drama, but I really can't imagine this happening in real life.
I think people would be supportive of it, actually. I think, why not? I think we should have a gay member of the royal family. We'll have to we'll have to see what happens in the future. But yeah, I mean, talk about modernising the royal family. It's about time, I say.
Hi, I'm Meghan Markle.
And I'm Harry. Harry.
And we're royally screwed.
That's very good. Harry's forgotten his surname, because now we know, since As Ever came out, that their surname keeps changing, and Meghan's just rebranded herself as Sussex. So it's quite funny he's not quite sure what his surname is in this clip.
Each week we take a house from drab
to fab. The Anderson family had $75,000 to renovate their 3-bedroom ranch house.
It was our life savings.
Anderson family, do you remember what your house used to look like? Would you like to see what it looks like now?
This is very funny. The cartoon's always the best ones, I think.
Guys.
Do you love it? Real solid gold inlay. It makes the whole room pop.
You spent $75,000 on backsplash?
No. We spent $100,000.
Ugh.
That's very good. So they're alluding to their big spending habits. And at the time, they had just done Frogmore Cottage up for £2.4 million. So I'm sure that's what that's a riff on. Yeah, very funny.
I think this clip is particularly funny because it really sums up very effectively the kind of money for old ropeism of what Harry and Meghan have been doing since leaving the royal family in terms of their Netflix and media deals. And that's been a criticism that's been levelled at them a lot, which is taking vast sums of money and producing pretty substandard content for it. At the beginning, there's a very awkward moment where Meghan introduces herself as Meghan Markle on the assumption that everybody knows who she is, whereas Harry kind of looks slightly awkward and shrugs his shoulders and says, well, I'm Harry, as if he doesn't really know what he is now. And I think that's quite clever psychologically, because I think that's what we've seen from Harry since he's left the royal family, is that he kind of stormed off in a huff, but actually doesn't really know what to do next, because it's being a member of the royal family was all he was ever brought up to know. So I think it's very clever in that respect.
I don't think this one is actually that amusing, but it has sort of hit the nail on the head, you could say, in terms of Harry and Meghan and what they were going to do for Netflix. There's been all sorts of suggestions, and particularly with Meghan's company, the lifestyle company, there was suggestions that, you know, she was going to base her company on other reality TV shows, you know, where they've achieved success and managed to sell things. And I think this is a reference to that what can we get them to do? And it's a satire on, will they work as hosts of a program? Do they understand normal people? Clearly the makers of this program think they don't.
What's wrong?
Well, I spent the entire day begging my nearest and not so dearest friends and family to turn the press away, to refuse cold hard cash and deny that Maggie is dating Harry, because your family would not consider that dignified. And then
that's pretty insulting.
They come out with the news themselves.
This is ridiculous. This idea that, you know, Meghan here was, you know, upset by the news coming out. I mean, I remember distinctly when a newspaper broke the story of Harry and Meghan's romance. Meghan appeared to be loving it. She was smiling for the cameras who, you know, had flocked to her house in Canada. And I think, didn't she later say that she was asked not to smile so much because, you know, it was awkward for the royal family. But this idea that she was sort of horrified by the reaction, I think is absurd.
My family are just voiceless pawns in this little game we're playing. You know, my half-siblings who have never quite gotten over the feeling that my dad abandoned them are now able to crow very publicly that daddy's little princess is just an ambitious, spoiled brat. When everything that I have done was to abide by the needs of your family.
She's also defending her half-siblings and her family, whereas we know that pretty much as soon as she met Harry, she cut them all off, more or less. And especially, you know, her father, which this alludes to when her father sold his own paparazzi pictures on himself. That was it, she cut them off. And here she's been quite supportive about her stepsister, but we know she's never liked her stepsister and always distanced herself from her stepsister and always felt a little bit embarrassed by her family, didn't even invite them to her wedding. So it's interesting to see her defending them and sticking up for them in this clip.
Why don't we talk about this? Look at this statement. Did you write it yourself? Okay, so then Prince Harry's worried about Ms. Markle's safety and is deeply disappointed that he's not been able to protect her.
That's all true.
Protect me?
What's the problem with
Actually,
that?
he's got the voice
Problem is
quite
that I
well.
am not some damsel in distress who needs to be rescued by her Prince Charming.
Oh, you know I didn't mean it like that.
I'm a grown-ass woman living in a real modern world and not some fragile wench up in an ivory tower. My tower ain't ivory, dude.
This is interesting because this portrayal is showing Meghan as like really hurt by all the attention on her, and Harry produces the letter that he sent out to the press saying, you know, leave my girlfriend alone, and she's surprised by it and feels that she should have been more consulted. But I don't think that's how it happened at all. I think she was very much the driving force between all of that early publicity and how it played out. I don't think she was shocked and surprised and upset. I think she stood shoulder to shoulder with Harry at that time and very much helped him mastermind every word of that statement that he released.
I was happy before I met you, and I'll be happy again.
Is this what you really want?
The one thing that really is a takeaway from me is this depiction of the actor playing Harry, that the fear that the relationship wouldn't see the distance and she would be scared off by the public and media attention. That is definitely true, because he felt that played a large part in the ending of his previous serious relationships. And I know from speaking to kind of friends and contacts that that was something he was really fearful of, because he really wanted to settle down and have what his brother and sister-in-law had, and to start a family. So I can well believe elements of that. I mean, the Harry in this clip is portrayed as quite a supine character, and I think that would surprise people, considering at the time, you know, he was one of the kind of rock stars of the royal family, so to speak, and not shy in holding back on his opinions. But I do really feel, in a way, there are a certain level of accuracy there, because he was so desperate to make this relationship work. And he, from what I hear from insiders, he really did tiptoe around Meghan quite a lot. He was also very proud of the fact that she was a working woman who'd made a career of her own, and he was keen to ensure that she would find a way for that to continue after they got engaged. I mean, royal family actually did ask Meghan if she wanted to continue working as an actress, and they wouldn't have any problem with that at all. And in fact, it was Harry and Meghan who were keen for her not to do that and to come into the royal fold and start careers as full-time working royals.
So this drama is portraying them actually sort of splitting up, with Meghan there, you know, handing back the African bracelet that she and Harry have both got. You know, this is from the realms of fiction, the idea that Meghan was unsure about the wedding. I think she couldn't have been keener. You know, she was keen as mustard to get engaged and marry. I mean, remember, we had a Vanity Fair magazine cover coming out of very soon after this. I mean, obviously it makes for a good drama if they're splitting up and Harry has to convince Meghan to stay with him. But no, that really wasn't reality, I think.
It's obviously a very complimentary portrayal of Meghan, this one. I almost wonder if she had a hand in the script. Family Guy now.
That's fine, I'll go it alone. Just like Meghan Markle and Prince Harry.
Sir, your millions from Netflix for no one knows what.
Put it with the rest of them.
Babe, time to do our daily $250,000 sponsored Instagram post for Del Taco.
Well, that's very funny. I mean, the Instagram thing, not true, because they didn't use Instagram for ages. The thing about not knowing why on earth they're being paid so much by Netflix has definitely come to pass. So, well done, Family Guy. I think that was a good take.
The Family Guy clip is in yet another brilliant piece of television, which, much as I love what I write, I think cuts through even more than any newspaper story. I think what it does is it captures what some people might feel is the vacuous nature of Harry and Meghan's lifestyle, sitting around in California drinking cocktails, trying to bank the most money for doing the minimum work. And I think it's quite prophetic in a way, because it talks about Meghan kind of claiming a $250,000 check for a next Instagram post. Now, at the time, they weren't on social media, and they'd gone off it in a huff, talking about the evils of social media and how terrible it was and how they didn't want to be part of it. And the funny thing is, we've come back full circle, and now we see Meghan back on Instagram, and in a way where she's actively using it to sell her lifestyle, the clothes she wears, the makeup she uses, the products she uses in her kitchen. So it was really quite prophetic in that way.
Oh, this is hilarious. I think this sort of reflects when the tide was turning, perhaps, against the couple, and people were having sort of second thoughts about their motives. I mean, this joke about, Netflix and Harry just saying, "Oh, put it on my pile of money." I think, there's an element of truth in that. I remember in the Oprah Winfrey interview, we had Harry sort of talking about how he never really wanted to sign these deals. He only did so because their security was withdrawn. So I think he wasn't keen on doing it, and this is a sort of flippant reminder of that.
That was a real trip.
I hope you've enjoyed what you've seen in Acting Royal today. Do let us know in the comments below.
And for more great royal content, don't forget to subscribe to the Daily Mail Royals YouTube channel. What on earth is this?
I'm Charlotte Griffiths.
I'm Rebecca English.
Hello, I'm Richard Eden.
And this is Acting Royal.
I've been asked to watch some clips showing representations of Harry and Meghan over the years.
All right, let's get stuck in.
This one definitely looks like their home, I think. I think it could be an accurate portrayal of the glimpses we've seen of their home in Montecito.
Harry, it came! It finally came!
It's an invite to a fancy formal event, the Obama Foundation Awards Gala.
God bless Spitting Image. They just get these things so right.
Oh, is this one of them socks and shoes things?
The important thing is Michelle will be there. She's turning her book Becoming into a big budget movie. This is my chance to convince her I'd be perfect to play the lead.
When they go low, we go high!
Fantastic! I will be coming to watch that movie.
This really did happen. They really did try and go to events in Hollywood, in California, to try and get Meghan a job in the industry.
Oh, this is hilarious and very cruel, I have to say. Because, when Harry and Meghan moved to the States, there was lots of talk about them sort of being the new Obamas. They were going to follow their statesman-like journey, and they would also start making podcasts and television programs. And there was a genuine sort of talk that they would be, rivals to the Obamas. And of course, that's never really worked out.
The thing that really made me smile was Harry saying, "Oh my gosh, is this a socks and shoes event?" The Harry that I remember, one of the things I always associated with him is being barefoot. He would always, the minute he could kick his shoes off, he always walked around when we were on, royal tours, if you're somewhere, dusty in the middle of Africa, he'd like to kick his shoes off and walk barefoot. He always made a real thing of it. So this brought back quite a lot of memories from that point of view. And I think it's part his natural character, but also part of this kind of idea that he was shaking off the kind of traditional shackles of royalty and doing things his way.
Do you know who'd be great to play Michelle? Meghan Markle.
I do love resuscitating has-beens' careers, but I'm not a f***ing magician.
Yeah, that's exactly what happened. Harry went up to Bob Iger and said, "Meghan would be great in your next film." I actually can't believe it happened really now looking back on it.
And this use of the word has been by the Quentin Tarantino puppet, again, is very unkind, because it's something you do actually often hear on social media, references to Harry as has been. Because obviously he is a sort of has-been royal. So, there is an element of truth in it.
So we can see this set at Balmoral Castle in 1997.
What's going on? Nobody will tell me anything.
Wills, can't we go ask Father?
Interesting that he calls him Wills here, because everyone does call him Wills, but in Spare, Harry mysteriously calls Prince William Willie the whole time. And there's always been a bit of scepticism about that because, as this accurately portrays, everyone calls him Wills, not Willie.
Your Royal Highness, please lower your voice.
Thomas, why is everyone awake? Did something bad happen?
I'm so sorry.
Well, this clearly didn't happen because, as we know from Harry himself, both himself and William were asleep and their father woke them up.
I'm afraid I have some dreadful news. We've had an accident. I mean to say, Mummy's had an accident in Paris.
Is she all right?
No, William, I'm afraid she's not all right. She was hurt quite badly. Her car went out of control. It appears some photographers were chasing her, and the doctors tried very, very hard to help her. But I'm afraid she's gone.
Harry and Spare talked about how his father did impart the news to them personally, but they didn't get any hugs, and that's what they needed as children.
In the case of Harry, he just wasn't able to accept that it was true. Then everything carried on as normal, and the family made a decision to continue as if nothing had happened, and they all went to church. The boys, I think, went with them to church, and the vicar didn't even mention Diana's death in his sermon.
I mean, it must be, as a programme maker, very difficult to reenact such deeply personal and emotional scenes, such as two young boys being told about the death of their mother. And of course, I think the filmmakers take some liberty with it as well. I mean, there are things that are very basically wrong, such as the idea that, William and Harry were woken up by noise in Balmoral Castle, and staff had warned them that something was going on. My understanding, and certainly from Harry's own account, is that's not what happened, that they were woken up personally by their father.
Some pretty hammy acting. I think what happened in real life was that he sat on the end of their bed and sort of woke them up gently. But in this, they're sort of standing to attention, and he's revealing this dramatic information.
So we only have Harry's account, so we're not entirely sure whether that's true, but certainly he depicts in Spare the idea that how wrong it was for a child of his age and also of William's age to be told in that way and not be comforted afterwards.
I believe that, again,
this is one of my favourite depictions of Harry on film ever.
Played an important role, a destructive role in my growing up. Unfortunately, stories that I've only shared with one or two people within my inner circle ends up front page of newspaper or any page. Your circle of friends starts to shrink and diminish rather rapidly.
Well, this is one of Harry's many court cases, and I think this was one of his cases against the Daily Mirror newspaper, where he'd been pursuing them over illegal methods used in the past. It was a case which he largely won.
The trouble is, in the UK, we don't actually allow cameras in our courtrooms, apart from very rare circumstances, which is a judge, for example, delivering a sentencing in a particularly unique case. But obviously it was a huge case at the time, and the television broadcasters had a lot of minutes to fit on the screen.
So this is an actor repeating Harry's words, and to get a sense of what it was like when he was giving testimony in court.
I think that's a good portrayal of how Harry sees the world. And it must be hard for Harry that he tells one or two people stories about what's going on in his life, and they did often end up in newspapers. And the reason for that is because, not all his friends were as secretive as he believed. And as he says here, his circle shrunk because of that. But it's always been something Harry's struggled to realise, which is that journalists have real sources, and often we hear things because his friends have told people who have told us.
It's one of these things that caused great amusement in the UK at the time and became almost kind of cult viewing because it seemed so farcical.
I think this actor, frankly, was more impressive than Harry himself. I think the way he speaks and carries himself, and I'm sure his testimony is much more convincing than Harry's actually was in court.
I mean, as well as not being the best lookalike, his voice wasn't particularly great either. It was just basically someone trying to put on the poshest accent that they thought possible, which the funny thing is actually when you meet Harry and William also in particular, they don't sound quite as posh as you would think they would. And I think that's because they try to be a bit more men of the people.
The thing is about Harry is he's very litigious, isn't he? And especially in later years since he's met Meghan, he has started to complain. And previously when he's part of the royal family, they said never complain, never explain. And so this was his moment to really explain how he felt when these stories were coming out and how unfair he thought it was.
The one thing I've noticed about Harry in recent years is he has become a lot more theatrical in the way he talks. And I do think that's down to Meghan's influence and this new life they've got in the media spotlight and with their production company in California. He kind of was quite natural when he spoke before. You know, he was quite kind of matey and one of the lads. And now when I hear him, and I haven't spoken to him for many years in person, but he speaks even normally in quite a soundbitey way, as if, you know, he thinks that everybody is hanging on every word he said to be reported in, you know, on the television or in print or magazines. And I think that's a very notable change in the way he talks to people. It's as if he's always conscious of a camera being on him.
What's up? It's your boy, Harry Windsor, aka Ron Sleasley. Yeah, official wedding video 2018.
When I knew Harry very briefly, he was actually like this. He was really fun and really silly, and he'd be like, "What's up?" So spot on, I'd say.
It's 2 a.m, royal reception still going strong. Meghan's out in the hallway trying to stop some of her white relatives from getting in because they're mental.
What on earth is this? I almost had an Australian twang to the way he spoke, I thought, in that. I mean, this clip depicts what we all would have loved to have seen in person and no one ever had a chance to, which is what it was like inside the wedding of Harry and Meghan.
Harry's quite funny, actually. It is that sort of laid back, particularly when he's trying to give a sort of relaxed, light entertainment feel, like we saw him with James Corden. I think he's really got that down to a T.
There he is, my dad, Prince Charles himself. So, Paul, you proud of your youngest son?
Yes.
Anything else you like to say?
No.
Okay then, all right.
That's about right. I mean, he's asking for some proud words from his dad, but his dad can only give yes or no answers. That's quite classic British monarchy, isn't it? Just sort of very buttoned up and not really able to say anything too much.
The king, again, not sure about the accent. But I think the whole scenario is very amusing, and I would love to have been a fly on the wall at that late reception at Frogmore House.
But the one thing that did ring true is the Harry character wearing actually a very lifelike uniform, I have to say, trying to get his father, Prince Charles, to say something on camera. And again, I'm not sure that's something he would have ever felt comfortable in doing.
I think that's a great clip. I love it.
Yeah, Mega, this joyriding's brilliant.
Go faster, Muriel.
I'm exceeding the speed limit as it is.
Gosh, this takes me back a bit. Spitting image was very cruel.
You sucker, Pennyworth!
Yeah, grass is up to the coppers and you're cogging it.
And besides, you're the one who nicked the motor in the first place.
Indeed, sire, but I distinctly remember your highness ordering me to...
Oh, shut up, wimpy.
Harry's portrayed here a bit like a sort of Prince Andrew type, sort of shut up, you wimp, you know, being very disparaging towards the royal staff, which... well, turned out to be true, didn't it? Because there were a lot of complaints against how he treated staff by the end of Megxit.
Oh, but no, Crash is
All
is
right,
a bit
you stupid
tasteless,
little hooligans. What have you got to say for yourselves?
It's not our fault. We come from a broken home.
Oh, sorry, your highnesses. I didn't recognise you.
Well, this is a very old clip from Spitting Image. It was a satirical puppet show, which was quite revolutionary in the UK and I think spread throughout the world, and was sharp and more than occasionally very cruel at the time. And I think what is obviously it's the height of the breakdown of Prince Charles and Princess Diana's relationship, and again, portrays Diana as the kind of the cool mum compared to the Prince of Wales, who had no idea even where his children were. In actual fact, they had ordered a member of staff to take them out joyriding. And at the end, again, quite funny, and this does tie in with what some of the police protection officers said from the time, is that when they got caught out after crashing into the gates at Buckingham Palace, they were like, oh no, you can't blame us, we're just poor little princes from a broken home. Very funny, very smart, pretty cruel, but according to people around at the time, quite spot on too.
It's a bit awkward though now, because it's about a car crash. That's not in the best taste with hindsight, but obviously at the time they weren't to know. But I think it's generally the way that William and Harry were portrayed at the time as sort of naughty boys. It's light-hearted, it's good fun.
This is really clever. It's picked up on something which, is now we're quite used to, but back then nobody ever talked about, which is that the royals would get up to no good, do whatever they want, and then when they got caught, play the victim. Oh, we're just poor royals, it's so unfair, we're not used to it. So clever spitting image. I think that's brilliant, very perceptive. The Windsors is, of course, the greatest royal spoof programme, and I've been addicted to it for years. It's brilliant.
Papa! I was just passing.
Oh my gosh, I love the Windsors.
Oh wow, I love this series, and I'm getting really good at staying inside the lines.
Very cruel, showing Harry not being able to colour in between the lines.
This is Pippa Middleton, who's sort of being portrayed as really sort of in love with Harry and hoping to marry him.
Sooner or later, she's going to realise I do literally nothing.
You're kidding me! That's wonderful! Oh, thank you. Talk to you later. Harry!
Bad news.
No, I got the part. I can relocate here and we can be together.
That's brilliant.
Knock, knock.
Oh, the Pippa Middleton character.
Came to return Harry's key. Did I hear celebrating?
Yeah, Meghan got that part in Hollyoaks.
Well done. That's wonderful. Good job you made that call, Harry. Oops.
What call?
If I said something wrong.
What's going on?
Fictional, but
Well,
very,
I may
very
have called
funny.
the producer and might have offered him a knighthood to give you that part.
This is very funny because she's saying, oops, it's only because of Prince Harry that you got that part in Hollyoaks. And although Meghan was never in Hollyoaks, we do know that she got that Netflix deal because she married Harry. And there's no two ways about it. She would never have got a multi-million-dollar Netflix deal had she not met Harry and become a sort of princess, as she liked to style herself at the time.
Don't just take my word for it. This has royal approval. The programme is adored by the staff within Buckingham Palace, I can promise you that. And I know has even been watched by more than one member of the royal family as well. And it shows the royal family with all their idiosyncrasies, but in quite an affectionate way as well. And we did wonder how the programme might change when they brought Meghan into the programme, but the actress has been absolutely brilliant. And it portrays Harry, again, it's a very one-dimensional view of Harry, but I think one that, almost as a kind of upper-class English buffoon who, just thinks everything is wicked and wonderful. But again, very, very funny. The character of Pippa Middleton is runs throughout this programme, and it's a throwback to the time of when she became a star following William and Catherine's marriage, but she's portrayed as Harry's ex-girlfriend and scheming to constantly try and split him and Meghan up. Again, very fictionalised, but it works as part of the programme. As I say, it's cult viewing within both the royal family and Buckingham Palace because they can see how genuinely funny it is.
Okay, so this is the greatest clip about Meghan and Harry of all time, the worldwide privacy tour. I remember when this came out, it just really summed up what everyone was thinking about Meghan and Harry, but weren't yet particularly saying so much, which is the hypocrisy of Megxit and leaving the royal family and wanting to live this sheltered life, which I actually believe Harry really did want to do. And I know for a fact that Harry wants to go and live in Africa for years. That was his real dream, where he could be pretty incognito. But somehow he got caught up in this move to California in the pursuit of privacy, and he never got it. And in fact, he engaged in non-stop sort of press tours and interviews.
The South Park worldwide privacy to episode was actually, I would say, a seminal piece of royal reporting in a way, and it summed up in one kind of devastatingly brilliant episode how much their lives had changed, how much Harry and Meghan had fallen in public opinion, and how raucous Harry's life had become since leaving the royal family in search of making a quick buck. And I would argue that it did more to seal their reputation with the general public than any piece of journalism that we've seen in the last few years.
I think it was the first time really that there'd been that sort of satire of Harry and Meghan in the States. You know, and generally they'd had a very good reception, but this seemed to sort of indicate that things were turning against them. You know, we want our privacy, stop looking at us. At the same time as trying to attract attention with their Oprah Winfrey interview and with their Netflix series.
You've lived a life with the royal family, you've had everything handed to you, but you say your life has been hard, and now you've written all about it in your new book, Where?
They call it wah instead of spare, which of course is brilliant, because that's what it was. It was just one giant long whinge.
We just want to be normal people. All this attention is so hard. Isn't it true, sir, that your questionable wife has her own TV show and hangs out with celebrities and does fashion magazines? What are you suggesting? Well, I just think some people might say that your Instagram-loving wife actually doesn't want her privacy. How dare you!
It's again that dynamic of Harry swooping in to defend his wife and goes, "How dare you, sir?" And then he kind of leans over onto fictional Meghan and protects her from the cruel comments. And it's again that dynamic of her being bossy one minute and then the victim the next.
At the time, Harry and Meghan tried to put a brave face in it and suggest that, you know, they understood as public figures, they found it funny and that they should take it in their stride. But from everything we heard is that they were absolutely devastated by it because it had cut through with the public in a way that we had not seen anything else have. And it, you know, the makers of the cartoon really got to the crux of what people were filming, that this couple were storming out of the royal family because they said they couldn't handle the public attention, they needed more privacy, at the same time as effectively selling themselves on a global stage to the highest bidder. And that it captured that hypocrisy brilliantly. The trouble is, I don't think Harry and Meghan would have got the stupidity and the hypocrisy of their position because they are so caught up in their own little bubble. And that was something that was kind of echoed to me time and time again, even as working members of the royal family, is that they were so caught up in this situation they had created themselves, and this kind of fairy tale in which they, you know, the victims of kind of evil, manipulative courtiers in the royal family, that they really couldn't see how much their own behaviour contributed to what was happening.
I think the best of all these clips are the ones that are parodies, because he is infinitely parodiable. And he's the gift that keeps on giving to these comedy writers, whether it's Spitting Image or South Park. And what it is the lack of self-awareness. You know, it's so spoofable, that lack of self-awareness, that seeking of drama, and then shielding away from it. The protecting Meghan, when we all know that Meghan knows exactly what she's doing, and she's not a clueless victim. She's a very smart woman. And actually, maybe it's Harry that's not that bright, and Harry doesn't sort of somehow get the game he's playing. Sometimes he's not in on his own joke. And of course, that makes the jokes even better.
Well, there's something that's really struck me watching these clips is Harry's gone from being that sort of very vulnerable boy who's, you know, been through that trauma of his mother's death and was treated very sympathetically in dramatic portrayals, to a figure of fun. You know, even in America, his adopted home, he's been someone who is, let's be frank about this, being laughed at on television programs. I'm not sure that's what Harry and Meghan envisaged at all when they moved to the USA.
That was a real trip.
I hope you've enjoyed what you've seen in Acting Royal today. Do let us know in the comments below.
And for more great royal content, don't forget to subscribe to the Daily Mail Royals YouTube channel. Hello, my name's Rebecca English.
I'm Charlotte Griffiths.
My name is Richard Eden.
And I'm about to watch a series of fictional TV representations of the Prince and Princess of Wales.
I have no idea what I'm about to see.
So let's get down to business.
Pennyworth.
Oh, the early days.
I know who you are.
Oh my gosh, how racy.
So this this is back at St Andrews University.
What are you doing?
Slightly cringe.
Just kissing you.
We're just friends.
And it was a friendly kiss.
It's quite funny that she's sort of resisting him kissing her. I mean, let's face it, if Prince William kissed you at university, you'd be accepting the kiss, I think.
And so it begins.
I have to say, this does feel rather American, though.
Keep your legs firmly together. You do realise this is the 21st century? Perhaps in your world, but not in yours.
That's hilarious, but her legs being open, I don't think that ever happened. I think she knew how to conduct herself without having to be taught by some stiff upper lip. I don't know who this woman was supposed to be, but, you know, Catherine was always elegant from the very beginning.
I can tell you for sure that never happened. She was a very natural learner. Yes, you know, they are instructed behind the scenes if they get engaged and they're getting married on subjects of kind of diplomacy and certain aspects of royal protocol. But from everything I heard at the time was that she was just a natural to the job and a really, really sharp learner, a quick learner.
Well, I mean, this is certainly a very glossy view of William and Kate's introduction at university. I'm not sure it was quite like that, really. I think by the time that Catherine appeared in the catwalk fashion show, they already knew each other a bit.
Well, of course, people think the royals lead their lives very much in the public arena, but actually William's university days at St Andrews when he met Catherine were actually very, very private. So we really only have kind of second or third hand accounts to go on. I suppose for a filmmaker that's ideal because it then means they can let their imagination run riot by drawing on definite things we know that are represented pictorially, like, for example, the moment that Catherine walked down the runway in the fashion show at St Andrews wearing memorably that transparent dress, and William was meant to have said, "Wow, Kate, she's hot." We don't know if it's true, but that is the urban myth about it.
I thought the costumes and the setting and the skiing sort of sets were quite good, but that's about as far as the reality goes. It seemed very, very Hollywood imagined kind of nonsense, to be honest.
You are a certified star pupil, Professor Saul Seymour.
You didn't do too badly yourself.
Oh.
You got an A. Minus. All right, she got that tiny eagle.
You are such a shark.
I wish the beginning of my relationship was like this. I mean, how romantic. They're racing each other. She's commenting on how he got an A. Gosh, what a squeaky clean, totally unrealistic beginning of their friendship.
This is very funny. So this is William and Catherine's courtship, or first getting to know each other at St Andrews. And we can see William receiving mobile telephone calls from other girls, clearly, and he chooses to ignore that and says, "Oh, Cynthia can just wait."
Keep still there. Gotta respond to tartar sauce there.
Tartar sauce. As if Kate eats fish and chips. I refuse to believe that.
I was thinking about taking Swahili. You care for a sample?
God, this is terrible.
Simpsons. I just told you that I love The Simpsons.
I'm not sure these pair are really much like William and Catherine, to be honest. But they're getting across the sort of sweet idea of a courtship quite well, and the playfulness.
What's going on?
I don't think Kate would sort of chew with her mouth open and then pick up the phone and say, "What's going on?"
Oh, 2 minutes. Okay. Okay, bye.
Hot date.
My lips are sealed.
Oh dear. So Catherine's already got a boyfriend by the sounds of it from this clip, and there is some truth in that.
He did have a number of girlfriends at the time when they started at St Andrews. Him and Catherine didn't get together initially, and she definitely had another boyfriend when she first met William.
This is quite funny. I mean, she's a sort of ladette in this. Maybe it's a beanie or maybe it's a beret, and she sort of slaps him on the back of the shoulder. I don't know. I think their friendship started as her being a little bit more timid. You know, there are accounts of her feeling quite nervous around him at first. But it is true to say that they had a friendship before it became a romance.
It's utterly terrible. I'm sorry, I can't soft soap it. And there's one little bit of reality at the beginning where you see William and Catherine on bikes racing to go and have coffee. Now, their relationship is famously competitive. I don't think I've ever been on an engagement with them covering them where they haven't actually tried to kind of outdo each other in a really kind of friendly, affectionate way. So that little bit was true. Now, I love
It's really exciting to be presenting the first ever Earthshot prize.
Everything about tonight is green. Even our clothes are recycled.
Just the typical things people have around the house.
Or garden. These are feathers from a swan that was savaged by a corgi.
So Spitting Image was a very satirical British puppet show, very famous kind of back in the 80s. Then it stopped for a while, and then they've rebooted the franchise. I mean, based on this, I don't think it's as funny as it once was. And they did a big error there because they have William calling Catherine Kate. And as we know, although he used to call her Kate in the early years of their relationship, he definitely doesn't call her that in public now. I've no idea whether he calls her that in private. So there's a little bit of an error there. But it is bang up to date because we've got his Earthshot Awards, which have only been established for 5 years. They've got, cameo appearances by William Shatner and David Attenborough. I may not go into quite what happens at the end because it's pretty tasteless, but then I think you'd expect that off a satirical puppet show.
I'd say both of their teeth, both Kate's teeth and William's teeth, they perfected on that one. Yeah, it's nice to see a funny clip of those two. We see lots about Harry and Meghan because they're so spoofable. But it's quite funny to see William and Kate getting a bit of a teasing every once in a while.
This is them lampooning Prince William and Catherine with William's Earthshot Prize for the environment. But it's very funny and, recycling things even from a swan that's been savaged. I think it's fun. I can imagine the royal family laughing and enjoying this.
Inside the Abbey now, everyone waiting with anticipation. There's the Queen of Canada in attendance, of course. I believe she just quit.
I love a South Park. I love a South Park doing the royals.
Prince makes his way down the aisle,
so
led by
brilliant.
the Bishop of Newfoundland. People in attendance now gently tossing Captain Crunch as the Prince passes by. As, of course, is tradition.
I do like the way they take the mickey out of royal commentators on big events.
Next to the large vat of butterscotch pudding.
Talking very serious
Oh, and here
things
she
about
comes.
something
Yes,
that's
there
quite
she
silly
is.
sometimes.
The about-to-be Princess of Canada.
South Park always do this thing where they refer to the royal family as the Princess of Canada or the Queen of Canada. I forgot they did that. It's very good. It's very funny.
Isn't she ravishing, so pure of heart, so strong in body, so hot in the face? She is indeed the living symbol of our great country. My God, she's beautiful.
Princess.
Canadian Prince now dipping his arms into the pudding, as is tradition.
Is butterscotch pudding a thing in Canada?
Thus symbolizing their union. What a glorious day for our country and indeed the world.
This reminds me of the coronation, actually, because with the dipping his arms into the pudding and stuff, because there are so many weird rituals in the coronation, and they take it all so seriously. And it's like, and now the oil gets put on the head. And it's all actually completely mad when you think about it through the eyes of Comedy Central.
Now, of course, wait a minute. What's this? Oh, something is going terribly wrong. The Abbey is shaking violently as explosions abound. The top of the Abbey is collapsing. The Prince and the Princess look on in horror. This is not the tradition. This is not tradition.
Not tradition at all.
Blasted into the ceiling, debris falling down and crushing several spectators, which is also not the tradition for a royal Canadian wedding. Bright beam of light shooting through the hole in the ceiling. The Princess now in some kind of isometric cube. This is certainly breaking with tradition now.
No.
Canadians in attendance cannot believe their eyes. Widespread panic. The Princess being hoisted away. The little mushroom people of Nova Scotia screaming with horror. The Prince is attempting to grab hold of the cube. This is indeed a horrible day for all of Canada, and therefore... And the pudding has just been knocked over. Oh, this does not go with tradition at all. The royal pudding now spilling all over the Abbey as the Princess is lifted up. And she's gone. The Princess has been taken. This is indeed a horrible day for Canada, and therefore the rest of the world.
Here we have South Park's depiction of William and Catherine's wedding. I wouldn't say it's vintage South Park. I've seen it funnier, but what I do love is it actually brutally takes the mickey out of royal commentators, dare I say it. And, I can look at my profession with a smile on my face sometimes, especially when you hear commentary these big occasions, because they have to fill sometimes several hours of television time. just talking. And even I find myself sometimes switching off it. And I wish I could count the amount of times that the commentator on South Park says tradition. This is not according to tradition. It is according to tradition. It's not according to tradition. So I think that's a gentle prodding at the actual media and broadcasters as opposed to the royal family themselves. And I do love the fact that they are claiming that everyone in there is obviously the Queen or a Prince of Canada as opposed to, you know, the UK or anywhere else. I think, you know, it's deliciously South Park. Not vintage, but good.
It's their sort of surreal humour, and it's quite funny. I mean, we've seen it when they were satirising Harry and Meghan, and that was probably more on the point, I'd say. But this is quite surreal.
There are no words. It's so funny. At least they have William sort of crying at the end. They hadn't forgotten him. Yes, that didn't really happen in real life. If you're enjoying this as much as I am,
don't forget to subscribe to the Daily Mail Royals channel.
That way you'll get reminded when we release our richly royal content.
And comment below.
We'd love to hear what you'd like us to watch next.
Hello.
I'm in the room directly above you.
So it's you that's been keeping me up at night?
Oh, my roommate. If it's any consolation, her noise keeps me up too. I only noticed you in the room below because they came to sweep us for bugs.
The Netflix ones, it's obviously got a bigger budget.
I think this is definitely one of the better portrayals of Catherine, I have to say, and because it's in The Crown, that's not surprising.
It was quite tough, wasn't it?
Yeah.
I bet you excelled. You seem like the type who excels at everything.
So in this, she's saying she did the Gap Year Rally International competition, and he's surprised, saying you did that too. But we do know that she moved on, I think, to do the Rally International. I don't think it was part of her original plan. And she definitely was aware that William did Rally International. So Rally International was this gap year sort of adventure activity holiday, I suppose, for posh people. But it had this kind of noble aim, which is to rebuild loos in Africa or schools in Africa. So it was a gap year for posh kids with a conscience, I'd say. I don't know, there's always been this rumour that she sort of deliberately did it as a way to get close to him, but we will never know.
You obviously also like flirting as soon as my back is turned. We're on the same course.
That's a bit out of order. We were just talking about an essay.
And how exceptional Kate is.
I'm sorry, would you mind?
Yes, as that happens, I would.
William is really good. He's got the William accent down perfectly. This sort of semi-cat fight, I'm finding very hard to believe.
Just go away. Please.
Okay, I really should go.
He definitely wouldn't have said no to an autograph. I don't think anyone would even ask him for an autograph at university, but he wouldn't have been that rude. I think they've done the casting quite well, though, being The Crown. It's just, the thing is, it's entirely fictional, because The Crown will never know what it was like to be them at university. And of course, this is the great debate about The Crown. Is it fiction? Is it a historical documentary? Of course, it's not the latter. And they should probably put a warning on it at the beginning of the show. Because, you know, here we've got scenes of them in their dorm room, and that's never been recorded in history, any biographies or anything. So, and they've never got into detail about that. So you just got to take it with a massive pinch of salt, I think.
Kate Middleton. And you notice I pause here for dramatic effect.
Go on.
Is single again.
That is good news.
The more good news is she's modelling in some university fashion show this evening. I happen to know the people organising it.
They've got the fashion show
That's quite the
costumes
outfit
spot
earlier.
on, which I think makes a big difference.
Like, you looked incredible.
I just felt like doing something drastic. To know, one way or another,
What?
if you were interested.
Oh, that's nice. It's their first kiss.
It's St Andrews.
Yeah.
Tomorrow. I'm looking at a couple of houses for next year.
Have you decided who you're going to live with?
There's this place on Hope Street which looks good.
I like Hope Street.
But it's got 4 bedrooms and there's just 3 of us. Unless you happen to know a 4th.
It's interesting that they're setting up there the fact that they live together. I've always found that really interesting that they actually lived together before they became a couple, which is highly unusual. I remember when I was at university, you didn't live, actually we all lived with other girls, you know. It was quite unusual to decide so soon after Freshers' Week to live with other boys, let alone Prince William.
These are 2 good young actors, and I think it is It's quite a convincing performance of what they could have been like. I mean, come on, it's complete guesswork. We don't know in reality how they behaved towards each other, what they said. But as a drama, it's quite convincing.
And we can only guess that something like this happened. And then obviously you have a happy ending of them finally getting together, which did actually happen, my understanding is, after they moved in together, following their first year in halls of residence, when they finally moved into a flat share with another one of their friends, Ollie Baker. But again, a lot of it is guesstimate. I mean, people will love it because they love the way the Crown portrays things. For me, I find it a little bit too cringe.
University hasn't been easy by the signs of it.
No.
If what Harry said is true, and your dissatisfaction has more to do with affairs of the heart, well, what else would one call it?
This really was a magnificent
Dating.
portrayal of the Queen, I have to say.
Yes. I don't know that word, because we didn't do that in my day. We met someone, then married them and got on with it.
I think the script really spells it out here. Dating, I don't know that word because I'm the Queen of England. I think a little bit hammy. Also, the Queen didn't have this kind of conversation with any family member. You know, even with Charles and Diana, Diana used to have to sneak in to find the Queen to talk about emotions and feelings, and the Queen would shut down. She hated talking about things like this. I just don't think she was talking about dating with her grandson. It just wouldn't have happened.
There's certainly no danger of marriage in this case. There's no danger of dating either. I made a mess of it.
And you don't want to hear anything about other fish in the sea?
Now, William was close
or encouragement
to
to make
I'm
another
not sure
go
this
of
is
it.
the kind of conversation they would have
Well,
had.
if I did that, it would be another word you don't know. Stalking.
Actually, I do know that word.
Oh.
Don't lose faith. I'm a firm believer that what is meant for you won't pass you by. He makes sure of that.
Now, we see a moment in The Crown where William is having a candid conversation with his grandmother, Her Majesty late Queen Elizabeth. Now, that's something that is true. He was very, very close to the Queen. In fact, when he was at Eton, he would often leave school and wander across the bridge and come over to Windsor Castle for private chats with her when he was allowed out of school. And he really looked to her for guidance on a lot of things, probably more than, sad to say, he ever necessarily looked to his father for guidance. You know, she really was a lodestar for him. Whether he would have gone to the extent of discussing his relationship with a girlfriend, a serious girlfriend, potential future wife, I'm not so sure. And he was always very respectful in his conversations with the Queen, open, honest, but respectful. And I just can't see them quite having a conversation along those lines. But, you know, the portrayal of Queen Elizabeth is as always magnificent, and the William isn't bad either.
I think this is interesting. So this must be the breakup that we all know Kate and William had. Interesting that she's not encouraging him necessarily to get back together with her. I think what actually happened behind the scenes was actually his family did rally round and encourage them to get back together once he'd taken his break to sow his wild oats.
I just can't see this type of chat happening. What, talking about stalking and dating. I'm not convinced by the dialogue at all. What this refers to is a real life incident where Prince William did consider leaving university. I think he thought he might have made a mistake for various reasons. I'm not sure it was to do with dating. I think that's something they've invented. But certainly there was a wobble. He wasn't sure. You know, St Andrews is a long way from London and Windsor, and I think he was having second thoughts. So it's the idea that the Queen could offer some advice. I mean, my goodness, I'm not sure the Queen would have been very well placed to give advice about university. She didn't go to university. She didn't even attend school. She was just given tutorial in what it was felt that she should know. So I'm not sure that he probably would have lent on the Queen for advice. Well, that was fun. I wasn't expecting to laugh that much, actually.
If you want to see more content like this,
subscribe to the Daily Mail Royals channel.
That way you'll be reminded
when we release our richly royal content twice weekly.
Like and leave a comment if you fancy.
And we'll see you soon on Acting Royal.
Cheerio.
Ooh, they brought up the unconscious bias thing and the Nazi thing. They're really treading quite close to the line here, and I'm here for it. I'm Charlotte Griffiths.
My name is Richard Eden.
Hello, my name's Rebecca English.
I'm about to watch more selection of TV and film.
Representations of the Prince and Princess of Wales. I have no idea what I'm about to see.
So let's get down to business.
The younger the better.
And obviously Queen Elizabeth
I think
is
what
still
we're
alive.
saying is we need someone younger.
And Prince
but also
Andrew's a member of the royal
older than the
family.
younger ones.
That hasn't
That's
happened
not
for a
what
bit.
I'm saying.
You got fresh ideas, Charles. Lay them on me then, genius.
Organic crackers. Oh, not that again. No, hear me out. This time they'll be a lot less crumbly.
Can I jump in? My family sells party supplies, right? Will and I are thinking synergy. Royal balloons, royal confetti, royal kitty birthday parties.
The young dilemma for the royal family is just, it's ever their problem, isn't it? Because even their young ones now, William and Kate, are my age, which is old, which is 40 or above. So I actually think probably there was a conversation like this. You know, how to keep the royals fresh and zingy is something I think they probably discussed a few times.
The royal family historically have had a little meeting of them called the Way Ahead Group when Prince Philip was alive. And that was a meeting of the family to decide the direction in which the family were going in, having the right decisions. And this kind of slightly harks back to those Way Ahead Group meetings, but Catherine's included in that. And I'm not sure that's particularly accurate. We haven't seen those kind of meetings between the King, Charles, his mother, Catherine, ever that I've been aware of. That said, in recent years, the King and William have been getting on better. They have been having a lot more discussions, particularly after Harry and Meghan left the royal family, about the way things are going and the direction they're taking in. I mean, it alludes again, because I think satirists can't really resist it, referring to kind of Catherine's background as coming from a family who started this party goods business, party pieces. But again, her family sold that business a few years ago. So it just feels slightly out of date. And that's something she's never really brought into the family. Her family have always kept very, very separate from what she does through her marriage to Prince William.
Wow, I mean, clearly this must have been recorded before Queen Elizabeth's death, I think. I don't think you would have get away with this after. So, looking back, it is very amusing. I loved the drama Succession, all about a media magnate and his appalling sort of scheming children. So to have the royal family portrayed in this way is amusing, although obviously it's completely different, because the whole point of Succession was it wasn't clear who would be anointed as the successor. Whereas with the royal family, we all know who it's going to be, and everyone just has to accept that and get on with it.
We never talk about her. I agree, and we should talk about her. The more the better. About her life, about our memories of her. Why on earth do you think I wouldn't want that?
Perhaps because you don't like to be reminded how we got to this point. Don't you think there might be a connection between where we all are now and your part in it?
I hope you're not insinuating what I think you are.
I have to say, I do remember when this first came out. I do think the later series of The Crown got kind of a bit dodgy on the acting front. And of course, William didn't have this conversation with his father, insinuating that his father was behind the death of his mother. Seems unrealistic.
The thing that people don't understand is that I've been grieving too.
Surprisingly sympathetic portrayal of Prince of Wales as he was then Prince Charles.
Your grief? You're talking to me about your grief?
Yes, of course. You think I'm not shattered by this? Your mother and I had just patched up our differences. We
patched up your differences? What planet are you on? She still loved you. And only wanted to be in the south of France and not to be there when you threw a birthday party for the other one.
Calling Camilla the other one's pretty savage. I think that was good. I think that's a bit of an upgrade on the previous episode of The Crown. And yeah, I mean, they do spell out historical facts, like the fact that, it is true, Diana was trying to get away from Camilla's birthday. And there was anger from William, and he's kind of an angry person in some ways, even to this day. There's definitely that kind of temper on him, by all accounts. So, yeah, I thought that was pretty good.
It is believable, frankly, because we know from things that Prince William and particularly Harry have said that they, found it hard to come to terms with. They've questioned the circumstances of their mother's death, and the events leading up to it. So it is the sort of raw, unpleasant discussion you can imagine that certainly could have happened. Dominic West here as King Charles is, he's a brilliant actor, and I think he's trying to get across that sense of sadness and bewilderment and frustration at the circumstances. But no, this is strong stuff.
Now, I have to confess something. I haven't really watched much of The Crown. I have done when I've had to for work purposes. But for me, it's a bit like a busman's holiday and a bit too close to home. And the bits I have seen, I find myself screaming at the TV and saying, well, that's not right, that's not true. So actually, this is the first time I've seen this. It suggests that this is a conversation between Prince William and his father, Prince Charles, not long after the death of his mother, Princess Diana, in Paris. And William is venting his anger at his father in terms of how he believes that his actions over the years, particularly his relationship with the then Camilla Parker Bowles, was in part responsible for throwing his mother into the path of people who caused her death. I think the trouble is that one of the aspects about the royal family is that they haven't really had these kind of emotional conversations over the years, not in the way that maybe they should have done, and actually problems were allowed to fester, which probably didn't help the relationship. And I know that William and his father didn't have the best relationship while he was growing up. It was always a little tricky, and I think for understandable reasons. They loved each other, but they were on very, very different paths. Charles is many good things, but his relationship with William has not been the best. I think that this is the problem with imagined conversations. It does start to kind of veer into the realms of theatrical, which for me, as someone that's covered the royal family for so many years, I just find it a little unbelievable. Hence, I've stayed away from watching The Crown as much as possible over the years.
What's so hurtful about The Crown is imagining these scenes between people, who are alive. They know what really happened there. And to see that acted out, I think what makes it worse is it's been acted out by great actors, such as Dominic West here. And, that's very hard. Now, I think when they started The Crown, it was dealing with situations back in the 1950s or something. It lent it a sort of historical lustre. But then when it's more recent events, I personally found that very hard to watch.
If you're enjoying this as much as I am,
don't forget to subscribe to the Daily Mail Royals channel.
That way you'll get reminded when we release our richly royal content.
And comment below.
We'd love to hear what you'd like us to watch next.
Oh, Wills, we're in such a good place right now. If only there wasn't all this unpleasantness with
my
Harry and
favourite,
his
the
book.
Windsors.
I know. I've been thinking about him a lot recently.
I will just say I actually think The Windsors is the closest documentary, let's say, to the real royal family. I've always said it from day one. The Windsors just gets it spot on every time.
I mean, yeah, we had a fight. I was just a bit of horseplay.
No worries, Willie.
Well, after
This
everything you said, I
programme
just
is
need a
just the
total...
best. It really is.
It's my team with a briefing. Abide, and abide.
That probably is how the famous brothers fight happened. I mean, these are two men who went to Eton. I don't think they were really throwing very hard punches. I think it's probably just biffing one another on the nose.
Actually, I have been thinking about him a lot recently. I remember our fight so clearly. I haven't exaggerated any of it.
Yes, Harry's memory of the fight, of course, wasn't so much biffing on the nose as content for a book, possible Netflix documentary, and definitely the Hollywood stylized version. And this is actually completely correct. He completely, by the sounds of things, recounted it with added drama for the purposes of the book, possibly for Meghan. So yeah, I think they've got this spot on.
We've asked you here so we can apologise. I've realised now that it was
inappropriate of me to tell the world you're living in a cycle of genetic pain.
And it was wrong of me to say you're too formal. You're an emotional being, Kate. And you can hug, just in your own special UK way.
This is, imagining
You're our family.
Harry and Meghan apologising for what
Harold.
they've done.
Willie.
Of course, we know that's never happened. In my view, it should happen. And this is sort of imagining how awkward
I
it
never
would be.
really thought you were racist. Well, I probably said something unintentionally racist. I'm a white upper middle class man with no black friends. Something was bound to slip out.
Oh, that's what they call unconscious bias, like when I dressed as a Nazi.
Listen, we've got to head, but see you at the coronation, yeah?
It would be our honor to attend.
Bye.
Ooh, they brought up the unconscious bias thing and the Nazi thing. They're really treading quite close to the line here, and I'm here for it.
Okay. We asked you here so we could apologise. We've been over that. We're all good.
I've realised now that it was inappropriate of me to tell the world you're living in a cycle of genetic pain.
What's going on?
Cut!
Is this being filmed for Netflix?
We're really sorry. They just want us to go again for close-ups.
So everything you said was scripted?
Sure, but we still meant it.
Yeah, that's the bit I don't understand. A team of writers gives us this stuff. We learn it, which is bloody difficult for me, and then we have to pretend like it's real.
It is real. The writers take the emotional truth and weave it in a compelling and relatable drama.
I bet that was written for you too.
You can forget about coming to our coronation.
Oh, but we've got to go. We need more content for Netflix.
Not on my watch, lady.
No, and this is when they realise that the apology is, they're only doing it because it's been staged as part of a new drama. And oh my goodness, I mean, this really touches a raw nerve, because that's the thing, particularly King Charles has always feared that, from now on, anything which he says to Harry or Meghan could be recorded, because we know that their conversations have been written down and then skewed. They've been given, a very biased view of what happened. And so the royal family live in fear of more coming out and more claims.
Well, if only there really had been an apology, then they could have all been friends again. I'm not sure that apology's ever going to happen.
I know I've said it before, but I will say it again. There is nothing better for kind of royal satire than the Windsors. It sounds like I've got shares in Channel 4. I haven't. I just think it's very funny. And I think, as I said before, I know it's watched by the royal household, and indeed members of the royal family have been known to watch it as well. So here we have William and Catherine's with Harry and Meghan. It's a royal coronation special. As we know, there was a lot of drama in the months running up to the royal coronation involving Harry and Meghan. A lot of will they, won't they. In the end, Harry came alone. Meghan didn't come. And there is a brilliant scene in which you get quite drawn into, because the two couples have a kind of confrontation, and much to William and Catherine's surprise, Harry and Meghan say, look, we want to apologise for our behaviour. You have Harry saying to William that I shouldn't have talked about you being stuck in a genetic cycle of pain. Meghan saying to Catherine, I never really called you cold. You're warm in your own unique English way. And you're quite incredulous at that, because you think, it's not something we've experienced, and not something we're very likely to experience. And of course, then we realise that actually it's all put on for the sake of the cameras. Harry and Meghan are filming for the Netflix show, and then we cut to the real conversation between them. But I have to say, there is somebody who's got the inside track that are feeding the Windsors information, because some of their stuff is so on point and so clever and so up to date. It's a brilliant satire. Brilliant.
Here with an official statement from Buckingham Palace are Prince William and Prince Harry.
Savage with Prince William.
What's up?
Does not look good.
Michael, what's up, my dog? Hey,
all right, okay. Well,
good evening,
Gosh,
Michael.
it's a terrible look-alike.
Now, it's an honor to meet you, and thank you for coming all the way here from London. That's
yes, cool, Michael, we like to apologise. Unfortunately, William's hair was unable to make it this evening.
Very good joke about William's hair.
Devastating.
Oh, bravo!
Oh, hilarious. Yes, a bald joke. Yes, well, buzz the sides this week.
Oh my
Rocking
goodness!
the
I mean, so
Bruce
Prince
Willis
Harry's
look, broke the
accent
internet.
is truly awful. He doesn't sound anything like that.
British Larry David.
He sounds Australian. This is
Okay,
bizarre.
speaking of hair, how was the Quidditch match, Ron Beasley?
Do love a good ginger joke. I do think these two brothers, before they fell out, they used to tease each other all the time with jokes like this. I mean, I don't know if they ever did the Ron Weasley joke, but there was such good banter between them for years. I hope that I hope Harry can watch this and remember what it's like to just have a laugh and not take things so seriously, especially with his brother.
Just shave it, Wills.
Okay, just shut up about the hair.
What hair? Oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I made him mad.
Well, I have to say there was a lot
I
of kind of
I love you.
hair toing and
I
froing
love you
between the
more.
brothers
Yeah.
over the
All
years.
right, Windsor boys.
Windsor boys.
Yeah, bring it in, bring it in. Bangers mash, hello.
That's nice, their little handshake, and they're kind of how Harry knows how to diffuse his brother from being tetchy. I'm sure it was that way for many years until recently. I think it's quite good banter. I like it.
I'm not sure this is very convincing, but it does highlight the sensitivities about hair. And we know that because one of the most sort of gratuitous comments in Harry's book was, you know, when he had a dig about William losing his hair prematurely, which we all thought was a bit rich because Harry's losing his hair rapidly too. But I'm not convinced by these comedians, really.
We love American telly. My brother's fiancée, Miss Meghan Markle, is on the American program Suits.
Yes, Wednesdays, 8 p.m, USA Network. Check it out. She's amazing, isn't it? Yeah?
Right. The only difference between that show and this is people watch this one.
Oh, hilarious. What is it?
That's interesting that they made that joke about William saying, you know, nobody watches Suits, basically, because apparently William and Catherine watched Suits. I mean, depending on which account you believe. Some say they watched it after they met Meghan, but some people said that, in fact, Harry said in his book that they were slightly starstruck to meet her because they had been fans of Suits.
This guy goes shopping with Kate 4 times a week,
She loves
Michael.
hats.
She loves hats.
Kate's my wife.
I know who Kate Middleton is.
Beautiful woman.
Yeah, fine.
Great mum. Whenever the kids are being fussy and not going to bed, she puts on an episode of Suits and they're out. So.
Very good, making fun of Suits.
What are you doing? Ow! Stop it!
What they've captured really well is these two brothers did always fight and not get along, in a way, but it was a sort of brotherly banter, a sort of play fighting kind of relationship, whereas now it's obviously actual real life war.
So I've never seen this before. I don't even know this programme, but the timing seems to be that it was a skit during the engagement of Harry and Meghan. And in some ways it's quite prophetic because, of course, we hadn't had many of the big stories come out about the falling out of the brothers at the time. But here they are, squabbling like two young children on national television. A lot of jibing by Harry about William and his hair loss. And as we know, that came to become a bit of a theme in his book, very vitriolic memoir, Spare, in which quite nastily he wrote about William losing his hair and losing his looks and kind of how much satisfaction it gave him because he was always such a heartthrob when he was younger. And we kind of see this being played out a bit on the screen.
The main reason we know this is historic is because, of course, Harry and William would never appear together these days. So any idea, even satire, of having them sitting next to each other on a TV show is for the birds, I'm afraid.
Well, that was fun. That was quite a laugh, and it's been quite entertaining to see quite a lot of footage that I've never seen before. If you want to see more content like this,
subscribe to the Daily Mail Royals channel.
That way you'll be reminded
when we release our richly royal content twice weekly.
Like and leave a comment if you fancy.
And we'll see you soon on Acting Royal. Cheerio!
And then suddenly this started playing, and I remember my jaw absolutely hitting the floor and messaging this person and going, is this what I think this is? And they were like, mm-hmm. Now, once again, this was a complete masterstroke by the team at the Palace. They kept this completely secret.
Hello and welcome to Acting Royal.
And today we'll be looking at clips of the late Queen Elizabeth II.
And see how realistic they were.
And I'm going to give my reaction. So here we go.
I doubt there is anyone who knows the British people more than I do, Mr. Blair, nor who has greater faith in their wisdom and judgment. And it is my belief that they will any moment reject this mood, which is being stirred up by the press, in favour of a period of restrained grief and sober private mourning.
This is well-trodden ground. This was all written by Peter Morgan, the man who would go on to write The Crown. Basically go on to spend the next 20-25 years doing nothing else except dramatise the late Queen, even though he said he thought she was a woman of limited intelligence and he wasn't very interested in her. Funny that. It just gets the Queen all wrong. I mean, you know, we don't know what happened precisely between her and Tony Blair in those phone calls this week, but what you see here is it's as though Queen Victoria is playing Elizabeth II. She's bristly, she's haughty, she doesn't like being told what to do. There's no nuance there, there's no warmth, it's just the Queen being very prickly. And that wasn't her way. I mean, during those weeks, Tony Blair was in touch, mainly actually. Downing Street would deal with the Duke of Edinburgh over what should happen next. But this idea that the monarchy was completely stuck in its ivory tower and had to be told what to do by Downing Street is just simply not the case. But I mean, you know, lots of people like that film. It went on to win an Oscar, but it was just the start of, I think, a lot of the artistic license that Peter Morgan would bring to bear on the Queen over the subsequent years.
This is portraying the Queen's anger, really, in the way that Tony Blair tried to manipulate her in the situation after the death of Princess Diana. He was basically sort of ordering her around, telling the Queen what to do, and she didn't enjoy that at all. She felt she knew what to do to protect her grandsons, Prince William and Prince Harry, at their darkest hour.
Although this was actually before my time as a royal correspondent, I wasn't reporting on the royals at the time of Diana, Princess of Wales's death. I obviously know all of the people in the room. I'd met the Queen, Prince Philip, and actually Sir Robin Janvrin many times. And I remember one of my first functions as a royal correspondent was attending an event with Sir Robin, who was the Queen's private secretary at the time, and him being asked about this and saying he had never watched his portrayal on screen, although he heard it was quite sympathetic, and that he assured us the Queen had never seen the portrayal either. But I do know that Queen Elizabeth had quite a good sense of humour about these things, and she actually invited Dame Helen to a function at Buckingham Palace and made a point of speaking to her, so clearly no grudges were held.
Promise me one thing.
Of course, Your Majesty. Anything.
Promise me your silence. Were it known this terrible episode would shake the nation, you must never tell a soul what you did for your country.
Never, Mum. Not a soul. I promise.
My dear, loyal friend, I fear dark times lie ahead, and loyalties will be tested.
Now, this is Pennyworth, the prequel to the Batman films, in which we saw the butler played by Sir Michael Caine. And here he is as a young man, clearly receiving an honour from what appears to be Queen Elizabeth. I love the idea that she's sort of putting those conditions on him, saying, you know, I trust you with your silence and everything. I find it hard to imagine that that's the sort of thing she would say. I think almost she wouldn't need to. If she knows these people, she's worked with them for years, that comes with the territory. You don't need to sort of impress that on anyone. I love the way his voice sounds like Michael Caine as an older man.
There's a sort of minxiness to this Queen that I don't quite recognise. She was always very proud when she pinned the VC on anyone. She didn't do it very often because very few people win the Victoria Cross. There was one rather extraordinary episode which I wrote about in one of my books when she was pinning on one of the very few Victoria Crosses won in the Vietnam War. Britain wasn't in the Vietnam War, Australia was, and a wonderful man called Keith Payne, VC, who had rescued a load of young soldiers from a Viet Cong ambush and saved dozens of lives. Incredibly brave man. And he'd come to meet the Queen in the royal yacht when it sailed into Australia, and the Queen was there to give him his VC. Everyone's waiting in the drawing room in the royal yacht for this big moment. Just one problem, Keith Payne isn't there. And I spoke to the Queen's equerry at the time, who went running around the ship to find this man, because everyone was waiting for him to get the VC in a similar situation to the one in Pennyworth, except there would be a big audience. And Keith Payne, VC, was up on the top deck having a cigarette, and the equerry said, "Could you come down, please? Everyone's waiting for you. The Queen's waiting for you." And he said, I've never been so frightened in all my life. And so here was a VC who was so terrified of receiving, he was quite happy to be shot at by the enemy, charge into an ambush, under fire, save people's lives, all that. The thing that scared him most was being presented in a room in front of lots of other people. So, these are dramatic moments. So I don't really blame the authors of this series for turning it into a bit of a scene, because these always were a bit of a scene.
Now, I'll be honest, I've never seen Pennyworth, but based from that clip, I think the actress does actually portray the Queen as a young woman pretty well, certainly in terms of the way she looks. And I think people forget how utterly beautiful Queen Elizabeth was as a young woman, because they have this image as her as this elderly matriarch. But she and Princess Margaret were really some of the leading lights of their day. And I think she's also got the tone very well, those very kind of nasal clip tone of the way she speaks. So all in all, I think I would say a pretty good job from this actress.
We have all been trying in our different ways to cope. It is not easy to express a sense of loss, since the initial shock is often succeeded by a mixture of other feelings: disbelief, incomprehension, anger, and concern for those who remain.
Now, I have to confess, I've watched very little of The Crown over the years, simply because I watched the first couple of episodes. Some of the inaccuracies drove me mad, so I decided I'm just not going to invest in this. A bit like a busman's holiday for me. But I have watched some of the later series because I needed to for work purposes, and I think she was as close as you would come, bar Helen Mirren, to capturing what the Queen was. And obviously this was a hugely difficult part in her reign, probably arguably one of the most difficult parts ever, the how the family coped and how she as a grandmother juggled her role as sovereign and as head of state and the public face of the royal family with her duties as a grandmother, and the strong emotion she felt and the need to protect her grandsons William and Harry at a very difficult time. And we all know how that played, but I know privately she always felt that she had done the right thing by her grandsons, and that was the most important piece of the jigsaw for her at that very, very difficult time.
Imelda Staunton here in The Crown, recreating that moment when Queen Elizabeth addressed the nation after the death of Princess Diana. You know, it was some days later, and pressure had been building for her to make a statement, because when Diana died, her sons were with the Queen in Scotland, and the family felt it would be best to keep them there, away from everything in London, to try to give them a calm environment. But pressure built, and eventually the Queen returned, and I think she and Prince Philip feared that they would be greeted by animosity, anger even, from the crowds. But in fact, when they went to inspect the flowers in front of Buckingham Palace, they were greeted very warmly. I remember after this broadcast, everything sort of seemed to calm down. It was like it was a sort of valve being released almost for the nation, that felt like, you know, the Queen was back with the people in London and everyone could sort of breathe a sigh of relief.
I mean, The Crown got many things wrong, but I think that particular moment is a fairly faithful reenactment of that extraordinary eve of the funeral. And Imelda Staunton, the actual words that she reads out there, they're not identical to the Queen's speech on the day, but everyone remembers that line about "I speak to you as your Queen and as a grandmother." I mean, that's in there. So yeah, I think that's pretty much as was.
This can be an opportunity to reflect on our own good fortune, and on whether we have anything to offer, by way of example, to those who have recently broken free of dictatorship. We, who claim to be of the free world, should examine what we really mean by freedom, and how we can help to ensure that once in place, it is there to stay.
I really like the dress you wore on television.
Wasn't the one my dresser recommended. They take a lot of photographs of you, don't they? The only portrait that really matters is the one they used to put on the £10 note.
When they take that one, you understand who you are, my dear, as currency.
Well, that was Spencer, which I think is more notable for the actress Kirsten Stewart, who played Diana. I have to say, it's not my favourite depiction of Queen Elizabeth. There's quite a lot wrong with it. It obviously is around a scene at Sandringham at Christmas. You have the family all together, you have the Queen watching her speech on television. Now that's something that never would have happened. In fact, the Queen, as the King has also done since, make a point of the minute at 3 o'clock that their Christmas message is going to come on, they leave the room. It would feel so strange to be watching it with the rest of the family. So they're not there, and my understanding is they don't even really discuss it either, apart from a few pleasantries. And it seems to portray a slightly kind of cold and slightly patronising relationship with Diana, and actually from what I hear, the opposite was true, that the Queen was actually very fond of her daughter-in-law. She was frustrated, of course, by some of her behaviour at the time, but she was very fond of her, and that the pair of them actually had an enduringly warm relationship.
That is a conversation between the Princess of Wales and the Queen in the film Spencer, which I never got around to watching, and having seen that clip, I don't think I'll bother. I mean, that's sort of classic schlocky, not very good dramatisation. It's meant to be Christmas. The family are watching someone who is obviously the Queen, doesn't look remotely like her, on telly. I think it's meant to be Sandringham. It's a fairly stereotypical depiction of sort of cold-hearted, glacial Queen against poor Diana. The cruel Windsors putting the free-spirited Lady Di in her place. I mean, I can see why that didn't win an Oscar.
This is not the most convincing portrayal of the Queen, I have to say. It's hard to recognise her here. But I think the idea of the film was to sort of, it was meant to be very atmospheric rather than realistic, and I think the least said about this one, the better.
Perhaps you would like a marmalade sandwich. I always keep one for emergencies.
So do I. I keep mine in here. For later.
I love that. Haven't seen it for a while. There's the Queen, there's Paddington, again, Queen in another great British institution. And that was the cameo role that led the crowd and led everyone watching on TV into the big Platinum Jubilee concert outside Buckingham Palace. But it's very sweet, I think, and it's the Queen. It's her. It's and she didn't. What was interesting about the scene was after she'd appeared in. At the 2012 Olympics, people thought, well, how could she ever beat that? And in a way, I think she kind of did with the Paddington thing, because it's very endearing. It's she by this stage, she's 96. She's been on the throne 70 years. She's been on the throne longer than anyone. She's not very well. All through that year, she'd been experiencing what the palace called mobility issues. And so there was a bit of a worry about, how is she going to take part in her Platinum Jubilee? But this was a brilliant way of putting her right at the heart of it. And I know from talking to the people around her, she didn't need any great persuasion to do this. And she had to act, because the Paddington character there would sort of be superimposed later through special effects. But that moment where she opens her handbag, I mean, what that does is go straight to the heart of one of the questions that the world has asked really for the previous 70 years, is what does the Queen keep in her handbag? I mean, I remember once going on a state visit to Italy with her, and one of the top Italian newspapers had put 2 reporters on the royal trail for the entire week, and their sole job was to find out what is in the Queen's handbag, and at the end of it all they could really conclude was, well, it contains a pair of glasses, a lipstick and a speech. That was part of her. That is, there you have. That's the sort of the great appeal. I think that's one of her finest moments, really.
I remember being at the Queen's Platinum Jubilee concert, sitting in the Mall when this skit with Paddington was played. And once again, Buckingham Palace had played an absolute masterstroke. It had been a complete secret, as her Bond skit many years earlier had been. Nobody knew about it, not a single word had leaked out, apart from the fact that us journalists got a few seconds heads up before it came on so we could prepare our papers for the next day, but none of us had seen this. And the gasp that came up from the people seated there when it happened, my understanding, she was always known as One Take Liz in the television community, and she pretty much was one take on this, as my understanding was, but she was in a lot of pain, and I don't think we should underestimate that. And then I remember at the end, as she started tapping her teaspoon in the film, then the music started echoing out amongst them all, and it just set the scene on a most memorable evening. And obviously bear in mind, you know, barely 3 or 4 months later she passed away, and how much strength of character it showed that she did that.
I think it was a wonderful idea to pair Queen Elizabeth with another British icon, you could say, in Paddington Bear. I think in a way it's wonderful that we have this to remember Queen Elizabeth by in her final year. You know, it was just months before her death, in fact. We see her here clearly a frail old lady, but determined to have a laugh with the nation. And then we went into her beating out the distinctive opening rhythms of We Will Rock You by Queen, and the concert started. No, it was a real memorable, brilliant start to that night.
The Queen of Sheba. Daniel Craig.
Good evening,
She's come into the palace, and she turns, and it's her. Now that's the extraordinary moment. I mean, what you have to remember, this has been kept secret. This has been kept secret from everybody, including most of the royal family. And it's the opening night of the 2012 Olympics in London, in the stadium. I was there. I was covering it for the Daily Mail. I'd been to see I'd seen the rehearsal for this ceremony, and there'd been various moments that had been just blanked out. We didn't know what was going to happen. We had no idea. So this really was a secret. And it had all been building up, and then after an hour or two into the ceremony, this video comes on the screen, and it really does. I mean, it was one of the best bits of kind of live TV theatre choreography, whatever you want to call it, I think I've ever seen, because it was just so brilliantly put together. And when the idea of doing this was put to her, actually, she made up her mind very quickly and said, I remember talking to Seb Coe, who was putting the Olympics together, and he really didn't think there was much chance of the Queen agreeing to this, and he was very pleasantly surprised when the word came back, no, she'll do it. So it was all set up, and as you'll have seen, she only had one line, which she had to learn. Originally, the line was, "Good evening, James." And the Queen said, no, look, I'll do this, but I do want to change the script. And I thought, well, to what? And she said, well, I want to say good evening, Mr. Bond, because that's what I would say. So it was, no one's going to argue with that. So that's why she says good evening, Mr. Bond. The original script said good evening, James.
Now, once again, this was a complete masterstroke by the team at the Palace. They kept this completely secret. The only little clue we had was there was a comment in a diary column in one of the newspapers which said that Daniel Craig had been seen visiting Buckingham Palace, and we all kind of wondered, did they get that right? Or if it was, it might have been for some kind of private audience ahead of some honour he was getting or some gong. And we hadn't been given any clue that this was going to happen. I remember being told by somebody I knew at the Palace, they messaged me and said, are you watching the Olympics? I'm like, well, yeah, I am watching the opening ceremony as well, because it was a big deal in 2012, it was in London. And then suddenly this started playing, and I remember my jaw absolutely hitting the floor and messaging this person and going, is this what I think this is? And they were like, mm-hmm. And then the skit went on, of course, at the end, we actually, the film footage then transfers to live footage of somebody jumping out of a plane, and then the Queen walking in as they land into the stadium, and just the world erupting and showing what just an absolutely brilliant sense of humour she had. And I actually asked the person who was responsible for all of this afterwards, what was her reaction when you asked her? And they said, well, do you know what? Nothing ventured, nothing gained. And her instant reaction was, yes, when do you want me to do it? I mean, she was so up for this, it was untrue.
This is brilliant. I mean, this must have been probably the most memorable start to an Olympics opening ceremony there's ever been. I remember watching this and you kind of thought, is this real? You know, we've had in James Bond films before, there's been some portrayals of real life people, such as I remember Margaret Thatcher in one of the films. But to have the Queen with James Bond here in this film, and then if you remember what happened, you know, in the stadium, then we had the helicopter and someone coming out and people thinking, what on earth is going on here? Surely this is not the Queen. You know, and apparently even members of the royal family didn't know what was going on. They didn't know about it. Prince Charles at that time, Prince Harry, apparently it was news even to them. So, you know, it was a really great coup to do it and to keep it in such secrecy. But I'm not sure that will ever be bettered really as a start of an Olympic ceremony. Just brilliant. And I think this shows how the Queen, you know, was willing to have a laugh really, and to, you know, we've seen her appearing with Paddington, and this is with another British icon in James Bond. You know, she was aware of how she was perceived around the world, and I think she wanted to use that to the advantage of Britain for the 2012 Olympics, which was a great showcase for the country.
The interesting thing about that dress was they had to make 2 copies of that dress. Very first time ever, her dresser said, first time ever that they made 2 copies of the same dress, because one had to be worn by the Queen and the other had to be worn by the stuntman who's jumping out of the helicopter pretending to be the Queen in a parachute. And the other interesting thing about that dress is the colour. It's a sort of form of peach. And the reason it was chosen, according to her dresser, Angela Kelly, was very clever, because it was the Olympic opening ceremony and she wanted to wear a colour that was not in any country's flag, so that there could be no accusation of favouritism. So she wore sort of corally peach because apparently it's not in any flag, so there you are. So that was, I still think that's one of the great moments. And certainly the reaction where I was sitting in the press box, surrounded by all these journalists from all over the world, and as far as they were concerned, you know, that was the sort of the highlight of the evening. Actually, if you looked at the front pages on many papers around the world the next day, they didn't say, you know, Olympics open in London. They said Queen jumps out of helicopter with James Bond. Soft power.
Well, I hope you've enjoyed Acting Royal.
If you want to see more great royal videos like this,
remember to subscribe to the Daily Mail's Royal YouTube channel.